鐘就夠人啦。我哋而家就進行議。
Right, and it's time to begin. Now we have attained the quorum, and I'll call to order the Subcommittee on Smoking Public Health Notices Amendment Order 2017. Under 21E of the House Rule, we're now inviting nomination from members for the chairmanship. We need to have a verbal nomination to be seconded by another member, and the member nominated should accept the nomination. Nomination, please. Mr. Yu Siwing, nominate Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. Mr. Wong, to accept the nomination? Yes, I do. Any seconder? Any further nominations? Yes, please. Mr. Charles Mock, nominate Mr. Kwokaki, Dr. Kwokaki. Seconder. Dr. Fernando Jones seconds. Dr. Kwok, accept the nomination? Yes, I do. Any further nominations? Any further nominations? Okay then. We're going to put this to the vote by a secret ballot. Will duty staff please distribute the ballot papers and tops with a tick on them. Number 1 is Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. Number 2 is Dr. Kwokaki. After members have put a top on the ballot papers, I declare the voting process closed, and there will be no further distribution of ballot papers, and members are supposed to put the ballot papers into the ballot box. Unless you have done so, please do not leave the seat. And under the House rule, members will be given a number. As I said, the number 1 is Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. Number 2 is Dr. Kwokaki. Will members please chop a tick next to the member you have in mind for chairmanship? Please do not show the ballot paper to anybody, and please fold the ballot paper once before you put it into the ballot box. All right, all got the ballot papers? Right, if you're done with your voting, I now declare the voting process closed. There will be no further distribution of ballot papers. How many have gone out? 13. Right, will duty staff please collect the ballot papers? Will members please put your ballot papers into the ballot box? And as you do so, and if you've done so, please do not leave the seat. Who nominated Wong Ting Kwong? Hu Xiuming, Guo Jia Mo Lai Guang. Okay.你講得好啲啦，我把聲要去到用到好殘啊。OK， 莫乃光。Mr. Charles Mock, Mr. Yu Siwing, please proceed to the podium to supervise the vote counting, please. Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1.
主席嗰邊13張選票嘅得12。
13 ballot papers. We only have 12.
邊就1、2、3、4、5、6。哦，2號應該係7張。
即係
7 for number 2, 6 for number 1. Will the supervisors please go back to the seat? 6 votes for number 1, 7 votes for number 2. I declare that Dr. Kwok has been elected as chairman of the Subcommittee on Smoking Public Health Notices Amendment Order 2017. Please, Dr. Kwok. Thank you very much, members. Just like to ask you whether we need to have a vice chairman for the subcommittee, please. All right, vice chairman. If not, shall we invite the administration in, please? With us for today's meeting are Ms. Amy Yun, Deputy Secretary for Food and Health, FHB, Dr. Jeff Lee, Head Tobacco Control Office, and Ms. Phyllis Poon, Senior Government Counsel, DOJ. I invite the administration to brief us on the paper and then throw the floor open for questions. Madam Yun, Chairman. This smoking amendment order is in relation to the health warnings on the packaging of cigarettes. We are proposing that the number be increased to 12, and the coverage area should be increased from 50 to 85%. The only difference is the container of a cylinder type. It is 85% and 50%. Cigar 70% and 8% on either side. So we are proposing that after gazetting, this will be brought into effect within 12 months. Right, very succinct, very pithy. Thank you. Questions? Mr. Wong Ting Kwong, please. Chairman, thank you. Basically, I understand everything about this order, but the question is there are two types of packaging. One is hard packaging, the other one is soft packaging. So for those who understand cigarettes would know that there is a difference between the two types of packaging, hard and soft. With the introduction of the new order, the soft packaging might present some problems, because for soft packaging, there is a seal at the top part of the package, and it is made of paper. To a certain extent, the seal would cover up part of the pictorial warning, and that would present a bit of difficulty there. The part that is covered may be very small, but certainly it would affect the 85% coverage that is proposed in the order. So will the administration kindly elucidate on this, please? Ms. Yun, the packaging, soft packaging. Thank you, Chairman. Thanks very much, Mr. Wong. Now, for soft packaging, we understand that there are soft packaging arrangements for different brands. We don't agree that there shouldn't be any coverage of the warning. Now, there are seals that are transparent for some brands, and with the transparent sealing, it would not conceal the warning like the one I have in my hand. The manufacturers can design the seal that would tie in with the 15% requirement. So just because of the seal doesn't mean that they don't have the space for their brand logo. This is technically feasible, so at the moment we don't propose any exception for soft packaging. Mr. Wong. Well, I understand that technically it is feasible, but it's all down to costs. If this has to be changed, if they have to change from paper-based seal to plastic transparent seal, they will have to change all the materials. So the paper-based seal, I'm wondering whether that will have any major impact on the warning. I think it will have a negligible impact on the pictorial warning. The world of tobacco is not something that is regarded as a contraband, and the sale of cigarettes is totally legitimate for legitimate products. Should we be so draconian in the measures that are being implemented? I hope that the administration would consider this in detail. Thanks very much, Mr. Wong. We don't have many members who would like to put questions. I'm not proposing any time limit of 5 minutes on members, unless we're going to have a surge of members who would like to put questions, or members are putting lengthy questions. Mr. Sukafai, no time limit, Chairman. My first question is that at the Health Services Panel, we had 2 motions. One is we endorse the 60 and 90% for cigar packaging, but you haven't heard our proposal. I'm not sure whether you are ignoring our requests. Mr. Siu, why don't you get all your questions in? Well, I've got loads of questions. Well, if you have loads of questions, I think I have to impose the time limit because there is a backlog of members. How many rounds are we going to have? Well, unlimited. So let's impose a 5-minute limit on members to start with. Right, we endorse the motion of 60% and 90% for cigar packaging. I mean, are you ignoring or disregarding our proposal here?
Thank you, Chairman. The panel had passed a motion. Of course, we considered that. But our initial proposal, cigarettes and cigars were the same. 85% of the area would be for the label, a warning label. And we had considered that there were some seals, some counterfeit, anti-counterfeit seals. So we amended the proposal. One side would be 100% and the other side 70%. So on the 70% side, they have a bit more. They have more area to display their logo. We understand that if it was 85%, they wouldn't be able to comply. So in the previous meeting, we had explained some people are concerned that if it's 100%, it's hard to make it that accurate. We explained that if it's because of human error and there are some margins of error in our law enforcement, we would take a more relaxed approach, and we had explained that we wouldn't necessarily prosecute if they couldn't comply with the 100% requirement. We understand that there are also different packages of packaging methods for cigars. So we propose in the two largest surface areas there would be a health warning, 100% on one side and 70% on the other side. But cigars doesn't mean that there's no area on the remaining 4 faces. There is area remaining, and they can do a lot of work with that. And after consideration, let's say we have packaging like this. One side is 70%, the other side is 100%. There are still 4 sides they can use. And for other boxes, we do have a large surface area. So we feel our original proposal of 100% and 70% is reasonable. So we will continue with that proposal. Well, I said on the last occasion, of course, with a rectangular box, there's a lot of surface area. So we have different cigars, attend meetings, and they said the security code and in Hong Kong, they are not a manufacturer, they're just an agent. As an agent, in such a small market, they won't, because of the Hong Kong market, adjust the label placement. And if you require 70%, then you will obfuscate the security code. And that would allow fake counterfeit cigars into the market. They had been expressing that view, and you have ignored it. And the Hong Kong consumers will have to take a chance. They won't know whether it's a real product or not. So you should ban it outright. You shouldn't just increase the tax, and the wealthy people could afford it, and people who are not wealthy cannot afford it. If you require cigars to comply with cigarettes, you know that in overseas the cigar packaging health warning are not the same as cigarettes. Can you tell us, is it the same overseas for cigars and cigarette health warning? Dr. Lee, let me answer. For cigars in Australia or in the EU, it's different from cigarettes. For example, in cigarettes in the EU, it's 60% in front and 60% at the back. For cigars, there's also some difference. Typically, it's 60% in front and 60% at the back. There is some difference. In Hong Kong, we had considered the industry and legislators' views, so we feel 70% and 100%. You can follow up in the second round. Mark Maygood. Well, first, could the Secretary give us a schedule of this Bills Committee, because it's a negative vetting process, so no matter how many meetings we convene, it will be endorsed. So I'd like to know when we can propose amendments. First, then I'd also like to ask, following up on the soft packaging question, we understand that public health is of utmost importance. We want the public to be healthy, but on the operation side, this measure might amount to obstacles for the industry in the soft packaging manufacturing process. If it's very hard for them to avoid the health label. In other countries such as Thailand, they can be exempted. So could we exempt soft packaging? Could we allow them to cover the health warning a little bit? Or could we reduce the percentage? So has the government considered that? Because the industry have expressed their difficulties, and during the interim period, could you extend it such that whoever the manufacturer is, they need time to sell their inventory? So could you respond to the timetable issue? We have a negative vetting bill, so the scrutiny period, we have the subsidiary legislation submitted to LegCo, and we have 28 days to scrutinize it. So if we don't extend the scrutiny period, then the subsidiary legislation on the 24th of May will expire, and according to that timetable, if we need to make amendments to the notice, the deadline is 17th of May. Now, if the Bills Committee feels that it is necessary to extend the scrutiny period, we can extend to 14th of June council meeting. According to that schedule, then the amendment deadline would be 7th of June. Well, I anticipate if there are questions, or I will also ask if we need to invite the public or public deputation hearing. I expect a more reasonable deadline would be 14th of June, and if we can't complete the scrutiny before the 17th, then we need to move on to the 14th of June, and the deadline for amendment would be 7th of June. Do we have time to extend the scrutiny? Well, if we decide today to extend, then by the 17th of May council session, we can submit that motion, and we have to see what the agenda is on the 17th of May, because according to Rule 18 of the Rules of Procedure, there is a priority to agenda items, and these motions will be queued behind the government motions, and we have a funding appropriation coming first, and the council chairman expects that on the 17th of May they can complete the funding, the appropriation, and if the queue allows us our extension to be dealt with, then we can do it. And if we can't deal with it on the 17th, we can still do it on the 24th of May. So the final deadline would be the council meeting on the 24th of May. If that meeting cannot handle it, then the scrutiny period will expire. Okay, that is clear. We can now move on to the second question. I'd like to respond to Ms. Mack's question on soft packaging. Just now, Ms. Yoon had responded We see in the marketplace there are transparent seals. Initially, we had considered the special case of the seal and soft packaging and the health warning. The original limit was 12 millimeters, and we relaxed that. So we agree that the industry and we had talked with them. We understand their difficulties, but if they want to obscure the health warning, we need to make amendments because in the public health notice it says that we cannot have any obscuring of the health warning. So if the soft packaging seal needs an exemption, we have to amend the relevant law. So there is a technical difficulty there. Regarding the interim period, previously we had suggested 6 months. We heard from the industry, but we understand it would take time to amend the health warning, so we now relaxed it to 12 months. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Yu Siweng. Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to ask a question about the interim period of 12 months. Do you have a consensus with the industry? And can this consensus cover the whole industry and help them comply with the government's requirements? And during the period, the amendment of the law is to convey a strong message that smoking is dangerous to health. So before the enactment or after enactment of the bill, do we have any, does the government have any plans to do more promotion such that the public understand what the purpose of legislation is and enhance the effect of the publicity? So 2 questions. Have we clarified the interim grace period, and are we going to add more resources to promotion and education? Well, I think the interim arrangement, initially we were talking about 6 months after the Gazette. The industry said it wasn't that they couldn't handle it technically, it was just a reprinting of the material. That was not the biggest problem. The biggest problem was the sales of inventory. So we now consider that and extended the period to 12 months. The bill was gazetted on 21st of April, and 6 months later the new requirements will take effect. They can still sell the old products with the old health warnings till 21st of April next year. So they have an extra 6 months to sell their existing inventory. And they had also expressed, the industry expressed their opinion. And so after 21st of April Gazette, they will be given 12 months till next 21st of April, where the new, so they can sell their inventory. The second question was, will you step up education? In public education, we've deployed a lot of resources, and cash runs a lot of programs, and we have a lot of publicity education programs for people at different levels of society. We will step up education and tell the public that the health warning will increase from 50% to 85%, and there are an increase of 6 types of warnings to 12, and the graphic warnings have a message, and in our graphic messages on this round, we want to talk about the health disadvantages, the disadvantages to the economy, and also the detrimental effects on the family members. I think Mr. Yu's question was, do you have statistics on the resources you have to promote education? Thank you, Chairman. After the law is enacted, We will have video clips, we have posters, and have activities, events to step up public education.
Mr. Yu, I want to be more specific. So during what time are you going to step up publicity, the whole period, and whether there will be any increase in the budget? Now, these are routine exercises. The trade has to shell out a lot of money, and we have to make sure that the public would know what's happening. Dr. Lee, from April this year to April next year, from April 2018, but this will go into effect in April 2018, what resources will be increased by the API, the publicity? Can you give us some figures? Chairman, for publicity, we don't have the budget for the time being. In fact, we have already started the publicity. Now, there will be the World No Smoking Day. We will have thematic activities to advise people to quit smoking. For the budget, I'm afraid I don't have the specific figure with me at for the time being. But for costs, we have the budget annually, and there is a sum for publicity and education purposes. We're going to be liaising with costs in the days to come in order to step up publicity regarding this arrangement. Dr. Lee, will you collate the figures and make available them to Mr. Yu? He is looking forward to having the statistics. Mr. Ben Chen, Chairman, the transitional period. I'd like to find out more about the transitional arrangement within the 12 months. Can they give the packaging a makeover anytime they like? Now, they may have the coverage of 50%. I mean, are you going to have the two types of packaging concurrently in the market for some time? Mr. Wang Dingguang also mentioned the paper seal. That the Council has been discussing this many times. We spent quite a bit of time lobbying the administration, but it seems that the administration is quite reluctant to take on board our views. If a little bit of the warning is covered up by the seal, I don't think it would make any material difference to the warning. So for your pictograms, are you going to have another set to cater for the soft packaging using paper seal? Would you add another set of pictograms so that you have a bit of an inset there that will not cover up the warning? If you require the manufacturers to make the changes and they have to adopt the transparent plastic seal, in a way the transparent seal would also cover up some of the pictogram, and technically this is illegal. The government will not advise people to do anything illegal, would they? Madam Yun? Right. Thanks very much, Mr. Chen, for the question. About the transitional period first, the amendment order was gazetted on April the 21st, and the new warnings, the format of the new warnings has been made available to the tobacco companies, and at the moment they're selling the existing cigarettes, and they would need 6 months or so to clear their stock, and they may have imported quite a bit of old format cigarettes, and they need time to clear the stock. This is a piece of legislation which is for negative vetting, and we adopt this 6+6 arrangement. on the 21st or before 21st of October, they can still sell the existing format. And beyond that, if the new design is available, they will not change over on one particular day. There will be a mixture of both. So between October 21st and April 21st, there will be both available for sale, and they need time to clear the existing stock. And on the 21st of April next year, they will be able to completely switch to the new format. Now, there was a mention of the seal on the soft packaging. We are concerned that if this is changed, there will be a read-across implications on the hard packaging as well. Regarding the seal, will in Hong Kong, the hard packaging it represents the majority of the products, and the manufacturers may ask for a similar arrangement in order not to affect the packaging. Mr. Chen. Now, there is a specific issue here. Now, for soft packaging, we like to have some flexibility, and I don't think we have come across any problems with the hard packaging at all. At this stage, the members and the trade have made these requests repeatedly. The coverage will be increased to 85%. This represents a major improvement, and this is an objective that the government is going to achieve. That this is only a technical issue, and I don't think you should be talking about the hard packaging that would present similar problems. I think you have to tell us whether it is difficult, and I'm sure that this is achievable. Is it doable, Mr. Lee? Chairman. Now, in Section 3B of the order, it says that the health warnings should not be covered up by anything at all. Now, with the transparent seal, is it against the law? What do you have to insist that they adopt the transparent seal? They may have imported tons and tons of cigarettes that are using the paper seal. Are you going to ask them to dump them into the sea? Well, there is paper seal. Now, technically, this is feasible. If we give exemption for the soft packaging, we have to amend Section 3.8 of the order. In the market out there, the seals come in different sizes. What seal are we going to exempt? Now, according to the trade, they may shift the seal up and down. Do we specify a certain dimension and what position? Would that present any difficulties to the trade? And that would make it difficult for the legislation to be possible. Now, there is no definition for hard packaging and soft packaging. Under the law, if we have this written down, it would be hard to define what is hard packaging and what is soft packaging. The world over, there is no clear definition for soft and hard packaging, and this is one of the difficulties we have in amending the legislation. Mr. Raymond Chan, Chairman. The government said that gazetting was done on the 21st of April. I think the tobacco company can make the arrangement. Are you anticipating that we cannot make any amendments? Can't we delete 2 of the pictograms out of the 12? That there is an argument still regarding the cigar packaging. I think for grey spirit to be allowed, the government should not start with the gazetting. It should start from the moment the order is enacted. Now, this is for negative vetting, and members would find it very difficult to change anything. Now, it may be a foregone conclusion, and the tobacco company can start printing the new format according to the government's arrangement. I think this is the message the government is getting across. This committee members may raise some amendments, but this is something for later. Now, my question is, the administration said that this 85% for both sides of display area, this is a moderate, this is a progressive approach. It means that there may be a next step. Do you have any plan, or to put it the other way around, with this change? Are you going to do anything further in addition to that? Right, to put it plain, I mean, how soon are you going to bring in the plain packaging? Madam Yun, well, nobody can say when or whether we're going to have the plain packaging, although I have to say that this is the way to go the world over. In the UK, France, Hungary, and Ireland, I mean, this is that they have the plain packaging. By plain packaging, they have a standard format. They have the logo. In Australia, I mean, they were subject to some legal challenge, but we learned that this has been endorsed. I don't think we can disregard this arrangement. We are still dealing with the 85% at the present moment, so I cannot say when or how soon we're going to consider introducing plain packaging, because we have to look at the effectiveness of 85% and also the tobacco control work. That the health warning on the packaging is one of the measures of tobacco control. As we have to look at this holistically, although we understand that if plain packaging is the ultimate objective, 85% is not a severe requirement. Well, you've got a point. This is one of the measures, and I don't think you can ascertain how this would help reduce the smoker population. In the days to come, I think you ought to conduct more studies in the trade or the smokers themselves. They feel that you're taking things for granted regarding the number of people who want to quit smoking, and you're saying that the smokers would be touching the package of more than a dozen times a day, and there would be some impact on them. Now, for cigars, I've received some submissions. I think they do have a point. They're proposing 60, 90, and would that reduce the sale of cigars? Now, 85 or 70, 100%. How popular is it in overseas jurisdictions? In the UK, European Union, Canada, they have their arrangements. If we make the amendments, will the administration accept the amendments, or are you going to take it back altogether? I think I have to put down a marker here. If we move an amendment here, what's the government going to do? Now, Mr. Chen is talking about cigar, basically. Madam Yun, I think what amendments you're talking about? Well, for cigars, the amendment of 60% and 90%. Well, we do have a justification for 70 and 100%. The Council has its own procedures, and I think we try to explain the position, but we would follow the procedures. Mr. Chen, what about overseas jurisdictions and the figures? There are two questions and the figures in Hong Kong to show that the health warning would help curb the number of smokers, and also the overseas experience regarding cigar. Chairman, about the local statistics, many members said that we don't have any statistics. Kosh and also Hong Kong U and the statistics, Census and Statistics Department have done studies, and we have the thematic study by the Census Department. 190,000 smokers who have tried to quit smoking, but to no avail. 39,700 habitual smokers never tried to quit smoking, but they wanted to quit smoking. According to the information, the habitual smokers would touch the packages not 13 times, so the health warning and the pictograms would be a very effective measure to help them quit smoking, advise them against smoking.
So we feel there is data indicating that by increasing health warnings, it can help Hong Kong public quit smoking and also deter want-to-be smokers from understanding the dangers of smoking. What about overseas? Well, Canada and Australia, I'm talking about cigars. Canada, Australia, they have no exemption. So in Australia, all cigars, they have to be sold in plain packaging. So Canada, Australia, they have no exemptions for cigars. Well, my initial question, if we were able to amend the bill, and if you use the Gazette date 21st of April, if that you use that to calculate the starting date, that would not be fair. Could you use the enactment date? Well, the tobacco industry said that printing the seals was not difficult. They will consider how much inventory they have and how long it would take to bring that inventory down. So as we did the last amendment, we gave them 12 months, and even if we have amendments and so on, it'll take and they will sell the new product, products with the new health warning only 6 months later. So the impact should not be very significant. Next, Mr. Junius Ho. Well, just now I heard Dr. Jeff Lee say that the seals, there is no legal definition for hard, soft packaging, but the industry is worried about the seals. Will they breach the 85% health warning requirement? We heard from the Secretary that we will be moving towards plain packaging, but they can't give a timetable. It will be progressive. So my question is, if we make an amendment now on the 85% health warning, if we bring it down to 70%, will that help resolve the seal problem? Because the current seal might breach the 85% health warning requirement. If we bring it down to 70%, could that help us reach a compromise on whether it's a soft packaging or hard packaging? That's my first question. In the annex in Part 2, there are 12 designs. I'm thinking these graphic warnings are not pleasant, but rather than the government imposing 12 graphic warnings, could you give them could you have 10 mandatory design, and could you allow them to suggest 2 designs? They can come up with a design, and if the government agrees, you can include it. Then that would help. Reduce tension. I'm not a smoker. I support the anti-smoking. And third, I think we need to be compromising rather than bulldoze the government's will across the industry. And if we also need to strengthen our publicity education. We also have a lot of smokers who like to hide in alleys and smoke away in corners, and they discard cigarette butts. That is not ideal. I think regarding the packaging, I can relax a little bit. I think that would help everybody feel better and could you reduce the health warning label from 85% to 70%? Well, 85%, we mentioned that in May 2015. Of course, the industry, they have their own views. So whether it was the deputation hearing in May 2015 and the industry's views, we heard from schools, parents, the medical industry, they support 85% health warning. So we would like to use 85%. And if there are some technical amendments, we would rather proceed along those lines. We had a long discussion and support for 85%. So we wouldn't like to see any changes. That regarding a previous question of allowing the tobacco industry participate in the design of the packaging. Well, we make a lot of reference to WHO. The WHO framework 5.2, Rule 5.3, they refer to public policy being influenced by commercial interests. Rule 5.3 clearly states that the tobacco industry, there is a conflict with the public health policy. So the tobacco industry, I'm sorry for interrupting. I accept Rule 5.3. I'm just saying, could you allow them a creative process? And I'm just saying you allow them to design 2 images so there is no impact or no breach of Rule 5.3. Now, regarding 85%, ultimately you want to move towards a plain packaging, but you don't have a timetable. So the increase from 50% to 85% is rather high. I don't think WHO says that we need to use the 85% health warning label. He's just asking you to consider that. Mr. Ho asked you to consider, could you allow them to participate in the graphic warning? And you can answer later, Mr. Siu Ka-fai. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to respond to Dr. Jeff Lee. We were talking about cigars, right? A lot of countries, even if it's 85%, EU, the UK, Thailand, it's still 30%, 40% for cigars. Why do they do that? I won't repeat my stance. I want to move on to the second motion that we had endorsed. The Pan-Democrats, they talk about the procedural justice. Just now the Secretary said by 24th May, if we cannot handle it, we cannot put forward our amendments. So that gives rise to a problem. The interim period has been increased from 6 months to 12 months. Now, if we look at the last amendment, they were given 12 months to adapt to the new graphic images. And you're saying 12 months is extension period is the same now. There was a Gazette on the 21st of April, and just now Mr. Chan Jixun asked the question. You're already of the view that we cannot make amendments. You are telling people to print the new labels. So are you footing the bill for that printing? The first question was cigars, and the second question was if LegCo makes amendment is endorsed, and if there are any losses, will the government be challenged by the tobacco industry? Are you going to refund the printing costs? Are you going to bear the printing costs? It's yes or no. I have lots of questions, Chair. We do have procedural justice you can ask. I can answer the cigar question. Just now, Mr. Xiu referred to EU countries where the cigar boxes There's a difference in the health warning size. If you look at Canada and Australia, where they have plain packaging, they have no exemption for cigars. So we feel if we were to have a we heard the industry regarding a separate dealing with cigarettes and cigars. Well, we're not dealing with plain packaging. If you, why can't you stick with the 85% for cigars? Just now you said you were referring to WHO. Well, WHO says that you shouldn't include nicotine and tar levels description. We understand that WHO framework and the international convention, they say that nicotine and tar levels should not be printed on the packaging, but in Rule 10 in the tobacco framework, Rule 10, they suggest that member country governments, the dangerous components, nicotine and tar, that needs to be displayed to the public. So in our progressive policy, we need to retain these. So aside from tar and nicotine, there are no other harmful components. Is that the case? There are. So why didn't you write on the label? Well, at the same time, if there's too much information to the public, they might not be able to absorb it. So we feel that tar and nicotine make up a larger size, and the nicotine is addictive. Tar is a class 1 carcinogen. So we think these are two important elements, and we need to tell the public that there are dangerous elements. Also, WHO tells you that, well, the Hong Kong public have, they thought that low nicotine, low tar was less harmful, but that's not the case. And you say that because it's a harmful element, there are only just these two. No, you said you don't want too much information. So we now have too much information, and that even obstructs the logo, the brand name. Well, less smoking. Well, the effectiveness of posters, and you can post notices in the building, and we still have other members in the queue. We can take questions from other members. Thank you, Chairman. The government needs to answer members' questions. If you make a Gazette notice now and we make an amendment, so you haven't answered that question. Now, if we make amendments, Mr. Hsu and I and other members will put forward amendments. Well, if you want to rush through it, we can do the same. I don't want to see that happen. So you need to answer clearly. Gazettal and amendment are two separate issues. Now, if there are hostilities between the executive branch and the legislative arm, that is not ideal. Just now, Dr. Jeff Lee talked about quitting smoking and failures. Have you looked at what are the reasons for failure in quitting smoking? Is it just by adding a graphic warning and by just making by adding obstacles to the industry, does that control smoking? Well, I meet with a lot of smokers who wish to quit. Why? But there's a substantial cost to quitting smoking. Just even though there's a lot of free smoking, quitting smoking medication, but even just to seek private consultation would cost $100. So that $100 they can use that to buy cigarettes. So do we have any free services? You can provide that information. Can disclose that to the public so that they can hear your gospel.
My third question. The WHO has offered a lot of advice, and you pick and choose, you cherry pick the ones that suit you. This 85% health warning, the WHO didn't mandate 85%. How do you feel about this proportion? Why do you have to have 85%? When you formulated this proposal, did you listen to public views? Did you have fundamental support? What about those who object to this proposal? In the public hearing, you pick and choose the views that to your liking. Tobacco industry has been around for some time, for so long. It has sustained the livelihood of so many people. Of course, tobacco is harmful to health, and there is very much a consensus there the world over. But do you have any long-term policy regarding those working in the tobacco industry having to change jobs? And do you have any long-term view of the industry? It's no good to inflict difficulties on them every so often, every few years. Would that be good for social stability, do you think? Right, let them have some time to respond. Madam Yuen, please. Thanks very much, Mr. Wong. Now let me address the amendment first. We introduced the proposal to the trade, and they are asking us to make available the details to them as soon as possible. And we said that after gazetting, this would be made available, and they would consider how the new proposal can be fitted onto their products. They do have their own problems, not just a technical issue of printing. They have the problem of clearing their stock. So we are observing the procedures. We have the implementation date of April 21st. Now we have already done the gazetting, and that they can start making the preparation. Now the costs will not arise for the time being, and first of all they have to clear their existing stock. Sorry to butt in here. Have you considered an obstacle in Let's Go? Do you regard this as a rubber stamp? Well, I wouldn't consider Let's Go as an obstacle. We know that there is a procedure, 28 plus 21 days, and the Let's Go can move amendments. And if amendments are made, we would follow the procedures. It all depends on what amendments they are. In fact, printing-wise, they can deal with this very quickly. The major problem lies with stock clearing. Once Let's Go has endorsed this, it can be done very quickly. So this can be done very quickly. Well, Mr. Wong, you have run over the time. Once this has been endorsed, we would follow the stated timetable. And the implementation date is October 21st this year. They can still sell their stock, and thereafter they can sell both. And until the 21st of April next year. So all the timetable is here. Technically, it would be okay, is that right? Even if we have amendments, the clear message is that the trade would have sufficient time for them to respond to the arrangement. So they haven't regarded LegCo as a rubber stamp. Dr. Lee, for the second question. Chairman, thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Wong, for publicizing the cessation program. Now, the smoking rate has dropped from 23% in the 1980s to 10.5% now. I think it shows that a lot of the smokers have chosen to quit smoking, and that explains the downward trend for the smoking rate. Now we have 600,000 people who are smokers. Do they want to quit smoking? I'm sure some of them do. Tobacco is addictive, and cigarette cessation, smoking cessation is a difficult process unless someone has some strong will, or unless someone has the family support. It would affect the success rate of smoking cessation. Koch in 2015 conducted a study which shows that half of the smokers and 73.5% of the smokers who have quit do support the health warning on the packaging. By Mr. Wong. Mr. Wong, please, you run over the time, please. Please. I don't want any more statistics. Right, practically, we have the smoking cessation program, and we also subsidize the NGOs in the community to help us with the cessation program. All of these are free. The consultation fee and the medication will also be free. We have traditional Chinese medicine practitioners and Western doctors, and we also cover different ethnic minorities. If someone wants to quit smoking, all they need to do is to ring up 1-833-183, and there would be information on cessation on the new warning as well. Yes, Mr. Ted Hui, please, Chairman. I think tobacco control is something that should be sustained. Smoking is hazardous to health, and this is a universal knowledge. Now we have to understand the impact that smokers would have on the non-smokers. There are some members who said that this amendment is a disrespect for the smokers. I heard that 60% of the people, of the smokers, are in support of the order. Now, I wonder how this can be regarded as a disrespect for the smokers. Second, we are enlarging the graphic warning. You must have some scientific data. What scientific data do you have that the graphic warning would reduce the number of smokers, and how effective would this be? I'm sure a lot of members of the public would be very concerned. As a parent myself, I am concerned about the younger generation being subject to second-hand smoke or becoming passive smokers. Now, how effective would these measures be, do you think? Right, statistics. The first question, the conflict between smokers and non-smokers. Dr. Lee? Now, with the enlargement of the graphic warnings, are we trying to label the smokers? Now, this is not what we are intending to do. Now, the purpose of enlarging the graphic warning is for the sake of the health of the smokers. We want them to be aware of the hazard arising from smoking. All these warnings are taken from real-life cases. We hope that we can help the smokers to quit smoking. So in the graphic warning, we do carry the cessation hotline. And I hope that the smokers, after seeing these graphic warnings, would be discouraged from smoking, and they would ring up the hotline. Turning to the statistics, now the reason why we propose enlarging the graphic warnings is because there are a lot of data from overseas jurisdictions that show that with the enlargement of the graphic warnings, more smokers would be tempted to quit smoking. In Australia, for instance, in 2012, they have introduced plain packaging, and the number of smokers has, beg your pardon, the number of smokers has, beg your pardon, or put it simply, in 2012, with the enlargement of the warning, together with the tax, they have put up the tax 3 times. In fact, in Australia, they have achieved a cessation rate of 0.5%, or 100,000 people with the introduction of the plain packaging have successfully quit smoking. There are also other data from other jurisdictions that with the enlargement of the graphic warning, it would help people to quit smoking. Mr. Hui also asked a question about passive smoking. Have you reduced the impact of passive smoking? Yes, indeed, Chairman. Koch has conducted some studies that show that young people and children are subject to passive smoking at home, and many children suffer from that because of the smoking habit of the family members. If we enlarge the graphic warning and reduce the number of smokers, then the chances of young people and children being subject to passive smoking will also be reduced. So this would reduce the impact there. Mr. Hui, any follow-up? No, I support the amendment. Mr. Shu Ka-fai, third round. Thank you, Chairman. Now, this 85% of the packaging, or let me turn to the soft packaging first. All right, soft packaging, Dr. Lee. Now, for these packaging, there is some transparent seal. Have you asked the tobacco company how long it would take for them to prepare the seal and for the manufacturing of the seal? You haven't. How do you know that they would achieve that within 12 months? So you just look at them on the street and believe that they would be able to do it? I find it really surprising. The second question, Madam Yuen, do you think that we cannot make any amendments? You're asking them to start printing. If they fail, if we've successfully moved any amendment, are you going to pick up the tabs for their printing? Right. Right. 2 questions there. The first question is the soft packaging. I don't think they can answer the question. They're just guessing. My question is, you're doing the gazetting, and you said that it would take 12 months, and they can start printing the new format. In the process, if we vote this down, are you going to pick up the tab for them? Will the government shoulder the financial costs? Yes or no? Now we're going to have the next meeting. I have lots of questions. Please answer my question. It is a hypothetical question. In fact, the tobacco companies are alive to the process. Well, just yes or no, please. Right, please respect the administration. Chairman, I'm not really making life difficult for you. There are so many questions. I don't think she would be able to answer the question, to be sure. Let me put another question. A moment ago, you said that 6 months and then 12 months, and you've talked with the tobacco company, and there are no problems, and they would be able to cope. What tobacco company did you talk to?
Last November 24th, in our meeting, there were 40+ tobacco industry representatives, and they emphasized that printing is not a big problem. They use computers to do printing, so it could be done in 6 months. So could you? They said they understand it's not a printing problem. That was made very clear. It was bring down the inventory. I'm the industry representative. Can you just tell me who? Just now the chairman said you're lying on WhatsApp. So now I'm asking which tobacco company. I don't want to have two versions of the story. Who was that? Who said they had no problem that it could be done? Which tobacco company? Just a few said that. Well, if you have a dialogue like that, that's not conducive to our discussion. So regarding the meeting last November, could you tell us if it's possible to disclose who participated? That would be better than a back and forth questioning. It's not fair to legislators and officials. Could you provide a document? So I want to ask you this question. This has been gazetted. So does that mean we have to comply? You've given the industry a DVD disc, and this is part 2. And there are 3 types of graphic images. One says if you have a cigar, how it should be printed. There are 3 groups. We have part 2. Part 2. You have to follow up in the next round. There's an error in the document you need to be aware of. In the graphic warning, part 2, section 12, the tobacco product, retail, container, if it's not a cylinder, and if it does not contain 1 cigar. Forms of health warning on retail container containing 1 cigar. So put simply, you already have a lot of graphic warnings. So if it's, as long as it's not 1 cigar or cylindrical cigarettes, you've already designed the graphic warning. So the industry tells me when they read the disc, the long cigar boxes, the discs that you gave them, the rectangular shape is this. It's not like that. And if you have it this way, how can they cover 75%? So they need to Photoshop the warning, and the image becomes distorted because it's a long rectangular shape. They have to, if you widen it, it becomes distorted. So would you accept that? I don't know. I can't read the image. If it's a cylinder, it's the same. If after it's photoshopped, it's a cylinder, it becomes like this. So how did that happen? For technical questions, the cigar company can contact us, and we can tell them how to. Well, can it be amended? They printed this material. Well, it says in black and white. The graphic image is there. So I want to ask a legal question. If they change the proportions, it says it's printed out here. So we have two questions. One technical. Mr. Xu says in the DVD the proportions of the image, and the second, in light of different packaging sizes, if there are changes in the proportion, is that legally feasible? Well, I don't think this is a new product. Cigarette and cigar packaging are different in sizes. So, Ms. Poon, do you have any addition regarding the amendment to the notice? Let me explain the different parts. In Part 2, images, it is applicable to cigarettes and retail containers, and also applicable to cigars and tobacco containers. Regarding Part 2A, graphic warnings, you have a semicircular graphic, and those are for drum-shaped containers. And lastly, for a container containing one cigar, that is in Part 2B, there's a 7 cm by 3 cm requirement. So after referring to that, we can go back to the different parts. In the 12 images, after the image and the textual warning, we have a specification. These specifications they use a similar format to the smoking notice from 10 years ago. They require a rectangular, black border. We have black borders, we have Chinese English wording, and the fourth, they require it has to be printed by 4 colors, and the resolution is not lower than 300 ppm. So if you see that the image that they printed complies with the first 3 parts and the specifications, then they would have complied with the legal requirement. Their time's up. So after they've answered, we can move on to the next. To use the cylinder as an example, so even though it's a rectangular image, but there are 2 rectangular images, we can accept that legally. So in the future, if they just convert that to 85%, they can still use, they use 2 images. It's not 1 image. They use 2 images to wrap the cylinder. So we can accept that, technically. So, second round. Thank you, Chairman. We were talking about the plastic seal. So, if the plastic wrap touches the health warning, is that legal? Well, we consulted legal opinion. The plastic, if it covers the health warning, as long as it doesn't cover the text and the image, it is not a breach of the law, because it's transparent. So how transparent does it have to be? This is an actual example. Could it have colors? The requirement is that it cannot cover the image and text. A transparent plastic seal, if it doesn't cover, then it doesn't break the law. Well, you sought legal opinion. Well, there are a lot of definitions for transparent. It could be a colored transparent, it could be red, like a plastic wrap. So I don't think you should tell the industry to use a plastic seal to cover the graphic warning. Otherwise, as the doctor said, we can come up with many different variations. So you should just give us an example, complying with the paper wrap. You should give us an example, and I think that would be the most direct, straightforward. You don't need to tell them what plastic seal is. Second, from proposing the 85% graphic warning, a lot of legislators had different views, and now they can accept the government's proposal, but the outcome is the government won't compromise even a few millimeters. So how can we have good executive legislative relations? So you are facing an industry representative telling you, Mr. Xu has showed you a lot of examples. You're not willing to compromise a little bit. So how can we cooperate with you in the future? They have problems, difficulties in the industry, and you can't help them. And what are the reasons for not helping them? It's because of the 2mm. Will that affect the public's judgment? Will it nullify the effects of the warning? Or do you feel that it would help the public quit smoking? Could you tell us the actual impact? If not, if there's no impact, why can't you take on board our suggestions? Ms. Yun? So how much are you willing to compromise? Well, our principle is to not obstruct the health warning. We don't want to make a change because of a small number of soft packaging. There are some actual difficulties in amending the legislation. Well, just now I said if you could provide an extra template, you have you could just provide some extra space for them to adhere their paper seal. Could you tell us whether it's feasible and why? If it's not feasible, why? Well, technical issue. Let me respond to that. I explained that if we were to relax the seal, you don't need to use the hard packaging. I'm trying to explain the other technical difficulty. We need to amend the subsidiary legislation 3(8). Currently, the seals, even from the same manufacturer, from a Hong Kong manufacturer, when they manufacture the seal, they have different sizes. If we regulate a size, what principles do we need to use? I talked with the industry. They said they use a printing machine, and there might be some deviations in the printing outcome. If you specify a width and length. Another question is the machine is not that accurate. So well, that you're asking for the impossible. The whole 85% is health warning. You can take this little area and move it up, then you can give them space to adhere their seal. So the issue, is it technically feasible? Could you provide a template? Could you tell us that? If it's not possible, why not? Rather than saying that we don't know the size of the seal, the industry will tell you. We can follow up in the next round. We don't have a lot of people with questions. They can just, well, legally we need to regulate the size. If we were to give the seal an exemption, we need to state how many cm by how many cm. But if we have different sizes, and there's also a question, we also need to define legally the location of the exemption. If we cannot define an area, it is hard for us to enforce the law.
Next round, please, Mr. Chen. Mr. Jeremy Tam for the first round. On behalf of the Civic Party, I'm in support of this amendment. I've got a couple of questions on the technical level. The first one is about the graphic warnings. I told the administration that the existing ones don't have any deterrent effect. I suggested that some more horrific ones be adopted. Now for these 12, I am looking at these, and they are not really horrific at all. There is a lady lying in the bed in Form 2 and 3, Form 5. I thought it is about littering, anti-littering, more than smoking. There are only a couple of them that would have some deterrent effect, like Form 1, Form 8, and the last one, the lung one, Form 12. Now these three would make people hesitate about smoking. Is there any possibility of changes? Can you identify more suitable graphics? Second, following on from Mr. Sukafai, I think the question is about horizontal or vertical, in particular the cigar boxes. The dimensions vary for cigar boxes. How would you deal with them? Those are the 2 points. Dr. Lee, thanks very much, Mr. Tam. About the graphics, when we put together these 12 graphics, we did ask the views of the members of the public. We also had regard to the overseas jurisdictions and some expert advice. Basically, for these 12 graphics, I would like to get across 3 messages. The first one is the hazard of smoking. Second, the impact that a smoker would have on the family. Third, the financial losses. Now, if you are smoking in a no-smoking area, you would incur a fine. Now, in relation to illnesses, I would like to convey the exact message that there are smoking-related illnesses that we'd like to get across to the members of the public, and we'd like to tell the smokers that if they smoke, it is likely that they will suffer from all these illnesses. Right? I'd like to follow up. I understand your underlying messages. But the fact remains that the graphics are not powerful enough. Now, Form 9, someone is walking with a walker. It seems to me that it's more like a message to offer help to the senior citizens or those suffering from mobility problems. Now, of course, you're not trying to instill fear, but I just find that the photos are not half as punchy as they should be. And are you going to change the photos? Dr. Lee? When we put together the 12 photos, we did go through consultation. We also had regard to overseas experience, so it took a bit of time for us to put together these photos for the whether they are sufficient horrific. Well, some of them are horrific, like the legs. I think only 3 will achieve the purpose. For others, we like to convey different messages, like the impact on family members and the financial losses. So for these 12 graphics, they do achieve the respective purposes. What about the second question? Technically, for different packaging, yes, this is a rectangular cigar box. We have 2 photos here. They can do it like this for vertical presentation. Now for horizontal presentation, they can do it like this. The graphics may be somewhat different, but technically this is acceptable. And the shape might change a little bit as long as the message is sufficiently clear to the public. It would be technically acceptable. Mr. Tam, the horizontal and vertical presentation. Now, before you walked in, the legal advisor has already touched on this. There are 4 requirements under the law: the font, the size of the resolution, as long as they measure up to this, it would be okay. Now, 10 years ago, we discussed this with regard to the smoking ordinance, and there are no problems with the trade. And let me get in a question myself here. Now, these photos. Mr. Tam asked questions about some of the pictures not sufficiently horrific. Now, if they choose the pictures that are least horrific, what's going to happen? And also these graphics, did you go through a very laborious process when you put them together? Are you going to change the photos every so often? Is there any mechanism there? Dr. Lee, Chairman, if the tobacco company chooses the least horrific photo, is it against the law? Now, under the order, Section 3, it provides that within a period of 12 months, the tobacco companies will have to display the photos at the same level. So within a period of time, at the moment and in future, we're proposing that within 24 months, they have to display all these photos for the same period of time, so they cannot choose any other one that is least horrific. Chairman, you also asked a question. In fact, last time we had 6 photos which have been used for 10 years, and the effect will be diminishing. So we are proposing that the graphics, the number of graphics be increased from 6 to 12. Now, in the process of putting together these photos, since 2015, we started designing these graphics. We polled a number of residents for their views. We also had regard to the overseas experience and the experts' advice. And in fact, before we launched these, the 12 graphics were put to the smokers and non-smokers for their views, and they all feel that they are sufficiently effective to incentivize people to quit smoking and also to get across the message of smoking cessation. Dr. Fernando Cheung for the first round, please. Chairman, we feel that smoking is a hazardous habit. We support enlarging the area of health warnings. Now, we appreciate that some manual laborers would, after a hard day's work, have some leisure time, taking a puff, and for those who are in manual labor, this is a kind of a pastime for them. But after all, this is hazardous to health, and it is also hazardous not just for themselves, but also for those around them. So the enlargement of the health warning may not be the most effective measure, as far as I am concerned, to reduce the desire for smoking. The WHO literature shows that taxation would be the most effective measure. Now, we have put up the tax, put up the duty for smoking, and it is a terribly expensive habit for the grassroots. If we put up the duty further, there would certainly be impact on them. Between health and a pastime for the grassroots people, I think I have to opt for health and public health and safety. So in relation to this amendment order, will the administration conduct any assessment on the effectiveness of this measure in the days to come, when we feel that the measures are not as effective as expected? Would there be any further measures to be rolled out, like an increase in the tobacco duty? Dr. Lee, right, let me address Dr. Cheung's question about the effectiveness. With the enactment of the order, we are planning a whole series of evaluation on the effectiveness of this enlargement of health warning measure. Now, with the enlargement to 85%, would that be effective? Should we do more, or should we enhance the measure? Now, we do have a plan to conduct some evaluation. Dr. Cheung, how soon will the results be available? Dr. Lee, at the moment we are designing the evaluation Now we have to do the groundwork before the order is implemented. We have to start collecting the data. We have the different phases of data collection before we would be able to analyze the effectiveness of this amendment. So for the time being, we don't have any specific timetable as to how soon this will be completed. We have to have regard to overseas experience and the overseas experts when we put together the evaluation. It would take a bit of time because to change the smoking habit would take quite a bit of time. So it would take a year or two before we can complete the evaluation. Dr. Cheung, will the evaluation be an independent exercise? Will you invite any independent academe to conduct the study? Yes, indeed, we will invite overseas experts and the local universities to conduct the study. Dr. Cheung, for the smokers, in particular the young smokers and smokers from different strata of the community. Do we have any statistics, or are we going to benchmark ourselves against the overseas jurisdictions before deciding what action, follow-up action to take? Dr. Lee, indeed, the Census and Statistics Department conducts the thematic household survey on a regular basis, and they do cover the smoking situation. They look at the smoking among adults and among different groups of people. When we put together the policies, we would have regard to these statistics. For young people, the number has been decreasing, in particular among students and young people. Now, this relies so much on the measures that we have adopted to prevent young people from taking up smoking.
So we will keep an eye on the statistics to coordinate our smoking policy. Next, Chan Po-yin. I'd like to ask, from a doctor's perspective, we will support tobacco control. When I go back to the hospital, I have to cater to smoking patients. I want to ask the government. I see some people say that increasing the graphic warning has no impact. So my first question is, from the government's perspective, this amendment to increase the graphic warning, do you have any forecasts on the impact? What are your goals? A lot of people say that it's useless, so why do you do it? So that is my first question. Well, 85% graphic warning has not taken effect. So after it's increased to 85%, we don't have data on how it will impact Hong Kong. But if you look at overseas, in Australia or Canada first, in 2012 June, the graphic warning was increased from 50% to 75%. According to Canadian census, the population above 15 years, from 2011, it was 17.3%. It dropped to 16.1 in 2012, and it dropped to 13.6 in 2013, and the latest figures have dropped to 13%. That's in Canada. In Australia, in 2012, they implemented plain packaging. So after deducting other policies, for example, tax, the smoking population dropped to 0.5%. That is a population of 100,000 plus. So when Hong Kong implements an 85% health warning, we can reach this expected level. Do you have actual figures? Our smoking population is 10.5%. The 10.5 is different between males and females. Males are 18.6 and females are 3.2%. Now, I want to say that just now we heard that we can increase tax, and the grassroots would suffer if tax goes up. So if we increase this health warning, it would deter them from smoking. That's why we want to do that. So it would affect some people's interests. So moving on to the question about money. The literature says in 98 that some literature say that the health impact is 4.6 billion, and I asked the undersecretary, it's now 5.5 billion because Hong Kong has to pay 5.5 billion related to smoking, and indirect taxes from the tobacco industry is about 4 billion. So we are subsidizing more than 1 billion on medical costs. So do we have recent figures? Because these figures date back to 98 and 2013. Yes, we do have figures. In 2011, there was a Hong Kong U survey. It's not published, and regarding smoking and economic loss, it's about 5.5 billion. It's the figure Mr. Chan referred to. That includes smoking or diseases arising from secondhand smoke, and the overall expenditure is 5.5 billion. The death is about 6,751 people. That's 2011 figures. So that is a more recent figure, but the report has not been published. The CU has also done a study. I just want more statistics because the taxpayers, aside from collecting tax from tobacco, taxpayers are paying more. And I want to say that a lot of patients, they have tumors, heart disease, cardiovascular, respiratory diseases related to smoking. Those are my questions in the first round. Mr. Junius Ho? I'd like to ask the Secretary if we are to put the committee stage amendments. So if we want to adjust 85% graphic warning to a lower percentage, let's say 70% for tobacco, so we just what is the procedure? So legal advisor, I already told you this timetable. If there's no extension, it's 17th of May. So legal advisor, what opinion can you? Do we just? Could you do the amendment for us, or well, for proposed amendments, you have to submit your proposed amendment, and we can provide you with a legal opinion, and then the government, they can provide their view and whether there are limitations to the amendments. The LegCo chairman, according to Rule Procedure Rule 57 and long-standing practice, they will rule on whether there's a charging effect and whether it's clear, and then the government will provide their view. That's how it will be handled. So the first step is a discussion. We get a view, and the view is submitted. There are two methods. You can seek the bill committee opinion, and then you can submit your private amendment. Now, I'd like to remind everybody we don't have a lot of time to scrutinize the bill. We will convene sufficient meetings, and if you have material submitted through the bill committee, you have to do so as soon as possible. I need to learn actual operations. All the reasons have been heard. So if I want to amend Section 3, subsection 4, E5B2, or 4A, subsection 6, 4A, subsection 7B2, then in these four areas, I need to reduce 85% to 70%. I can tinker with it and submit it back to the Bills Committee, and then the specific drafting can be scrutinized. So I need to make use of the time. This is the first meeting. After this meeting, I will propose suggestions to amend. I can submit it to the Secretary, and the Secretary can circulate it. And we know if we want to extend the deadline, the amendment has to be submitted before 7th of June. I'm aware of the timetable. Okay, no other questions? Then Mr. Siu Gafai. Thank you, Chairman. Returning back to my previous question, this Gazette notice B22848, in part 2, it says, forms of health warning on retail container containing 1 cigar. This 2B, it's for 1 cigar, is that correct? Part 2B, does it mean it's for 1 cigar? Well, that's what the text reads. So 1 cigar container has to use these images. And it's part 2B. 2848. That's correct. That's enough. That's correct. I just want to know yes on for the container for 1 cigar. So you see a horizontal image. The image, they're all in landscape format. So in 2A, are they referring to cylindrical containers? 2A. So B282, cylindrical containers. For cylindrical containers, the question I have was, it's all in portrait format. You can just adhere to. Okay, I won't go into that. I want to go back to B2796. The part 2 says 2B was 1 cigar, 2A was a cylindrical container. So if it's not 1 cigar and if it's not a cylinder, then they should go to the part 2. Is that correct? Other containers should come under part 2, right? Okay. So this is the question. If it's all in the part 2, Secretary and Legal Advisor, please refer to this. They're all in portrait mode, portrait format. They don't have landscape images. They don't have the long landscape photographs. So if they want to print that on a rectangular format, how are they going to do that? The industry phoned you and said that's your image on your disk. How are we going to transfer the image? And your colleague said that they could extend, they could Photoshop the image. Well, then the image becomes distorted. Now, if they don't Photoshop it, then according to the law, how can they adhere that to the cigar box? So, Dr. Jeff Lee, could you give us concrete examples? Mr. Shiu is saying, aside from the single cigar, we don't need that. We just need to deal with these rectangular boxes. Thank you, Mr. Shiu. I'd like to explain. This is a rectangular container. We have 2 images. This is very clear. This is a portrait picture. On this side, if it's extended, the shape might be distorted. We agree that if you use this, the shape will be distorted. But as long as we see the health warning, the text, the image, we think that is acceptable. It's not a technical problem. So the secretary reminded me, you might distort the image in different dimensions. If you can stretch it lengthwise or breadthwise, so the distortion is different. So we suggest using this example. It's distorted somewhat, but we see the text and the image, and we feel that that is acceptable. I'd like to ask on behalf of the industry, if before they print the image, they should get your professional opinion. So before they print the image, can they get the government's blessing? So would that help them? On the data Gazette, we had already issued guidelines. We have a phone number, the COSH number, and if they have questions, they could call us up. You can assist them. They won't be submerged in technical difficulties. Okay. Well, time's up. I'd like to ask everybody. We need to decide on a few matters. First of all, we need to decide whether we need to extend. If we don't extend, we have to, if you have amendments, they have to be submitted by the 17th of May. So we agree to extend. That's the first question.
Second, we have to decide whether we should invite deputations. If we do, then we have to find a time for this. Chairman, this is rather controversial. I heard that there would be deputations. We did hear different views, but it would be a good idea for us to hear more views. No objection, so we will invite deputations. There are some questions for the administration, statistics, publicity, and also the meeting that was held in November last year. We have to find a venue for the public hearing, but before that, I would like to have another meeting fitted in. And we hope that we can have all the meetings out of the way before June the 7th. Now, this is for negative vetting, of course, but we like to discharge our duty properly. 16th of May, a Tuesday, we're going to have another meeting. And May the 23rd, that's the time for public hearing. We have the venue available. We would set aside 4 hours for that. We don't have all the members here. We will circulate the dates to members if we have the quorum formed. We're going to have 2 meetings scheduled for May the 16th and 23rd. Well, we have clashes with the CIP and FEP special for the 16th, and on the 23rd we will be clashing with the development panel meeting. All right, let's find out how it goes. Dr. Zhang, Chairman, at the next meeting, I hope that the administration will answer regarding the enlargement of the graphic warning versus plain packaging that's proposed by the WHO. There are a number of countries that have already adopted this. Australia is a case in point, the UK, France. I know there are 4 countries that have already adopted this. Hungary in 2018. So will the administration care to explain to us why they are not adopting the plain packaging? I'm not sure about the Chinese version. Right, I think plain packaging seems to be more straightforward, and technically it is far easier to handle, because whatever brand you're talking about, they have the same plain packaging. The dimension, the format, everything has been or will be standardized, and it will be far more straightforward. According to WHO, this is the most effective measure. Why don't we adopt the most effective measure, and instead we adopt this 85%, right? So reply at the next meeting. Any further requests? Mr. Portier, Chairman, by way of clarification, when was this gazetted? From the Secretariat's paper, para 11, it mentions the extension of time. There will be 6 months and 12 months a grace period. I'm not sure whether we've got it right. According to the paper was presented to the LegCo on the 26th of April, and we're going to have 6 months. Is it 6 months or 12 months for the transitional period? Madam Yuen. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Mr. J, is basically 6 plus 6. This is negative vetting. The effective date is actually 21st of October, so with an additional 6 months where they can sell both formats. So there will be 12 months for us to make this happen. Mr. J. At the panel meeting, we have endorsed a motion to change this to 60 and 60 and 90%. Well, that question was raised by Mr. Siu and responded. Yes. We propose for cigar it should be 85 and 85, same as cigarettes. Because of the difficulties, we have changed to 100 to 70%. And there will be something that would be obscured. There are different packaging, and it's only on 2 sides that they have to adopt this health warning. They still have 2 other sides, Mr. J. So you will not adopt a 60-90 as proposed by LegCo. Right after consideration, we still adopt 170. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you all very much for coming. The clerk will circulate the dates. As long as we can inform the quorum, we'll have the meetings. Thank you very much.